Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to a podcast which is all about the Irish League, where there's only one story in town. Gerard Lawler is finally bringing in some type of VAR. He announced over the weekend that this big clash between the Glens and the Blues in the League Cup final, it's going to be the first rollout of some type of VAR within the Irish League. And it's fair to say the reaction has been mixed, which means there's plenty for us to talk about. On top of that, there was big results at the top of the league, even bigger ones at the bottom. So let's get down to it stat. It's time for your latest weekly edition of Kick and Match. My guest this week is Matthew Brown from the Shout at the Oval podcast. Hello, Matthew.
How's it going, Peter?
I'm doing well. Let's get into exactly what we're going to start this podcast off with. It's a statement. It comes from Niffle, and it was all that anybody was talking about before the games on Saturday. The Northern Ireland Football League has confirmed that the upcoming final between Linfield and Glentoran, the League Cup final that is, will mark the first implementation of Video Assistant Referee, VAR, to all you lot technology within the professional game in Northern Ireland. This milestone represents a significant step forward for domestic football, aligning the league more closely with European competition standards. While VAR will not replace the authority or judgment of the on-field referee, it will serve as a technological support mechanism aimed at fairness, equality, all those things. Let's say, and put it lightly, there's been a backlash to this decision.
Yeah, there has indeed been a backlash to the decision, and I can see why, because it has just sort of came out of the blue. There's no chat of it. Usually you get a wee leak here and there. The managers are fuming, the referees are fuming, the fans are fuming. I just don't really understand the person. Okay, so here's my cards on the table. I'm not a fan of VAR. I thought when it was coming into the English Premier League or wherever, like all around, it actually, if you remember, it came into the Champions League first of all, and it was mental. It just led to that crazy Spurs Ajax game that time, and I was like, well, this is just a different sport. But I thought, well, we'll give it a go in the Premier League. But it just did. It removed a lot of excitement from the game. And it is worse when you're in the stadium, because at least when you're at home watching it, you understand what's going on because you've got commentators telling you. But in when you're in the stadium, you've got absolutely no idea, and so you can only imagine what way Irish League fans are going to react to that, because they're not going to know how to react to that, because it's entirely unusual. And I don't see the point in it for a final, because it's such a big occasion. It's the first Big Two final in like 16 years. It's going to be probably, I think today there's only 15% of tickets left, so it's probably going to be a sellout crowd. You're going to have this showpiece occasion. I don't think you need to muddy the waters with this experiment. On top of that, I don't know where it's going to go, because they're never going to bring VAR into the Irish League on a full-time basis, in my opinion, because it is an astronomical cost. I think if you're going to spend the money that you have to spend on VAR, then you would be better off spending it on the referees and maybe looking at making them full-time, three-quarters full-time, getting them in a bit more often, training together, learning more, than you would having this video assistant referee. You're doing it from external sources. People have rightfully raised that the Irish League is maybe refereed to, rightly or wrongly, to a different standard than other leagues in terms of things get let go that don't get let go in other leagues, or every league is refereed different. I remember a few years ago Bobby Burns was sent off for time wasting at a corner and a game the Glens were chasing it, or a throw, and then that never happened again. Whereas in other leagues that tends to still go on for the rest of the season, but in the Irish League things change as the season goes on, so you don't know what they're going to do. They've tried this, bringing in referees from other leagues before, and it hasn't worked. It's been fairly bad. So I don't know. They're not doing the semi-automated offside. So you're looking at, are they going to start drawing lines and taking ages? Put it this way: as a Glentoran fan, we've had some awful decisions lately, but I can live with if we lose a cup final to a goal where a Linfield player's toe is offside, because it's really difficult for a linesman or a referee to judge that. right? It's just is, and that was the letter of the law. That was like the spirit of the law. It wasn't to a fine tooth comb until VAR came in. But if we were to lose a cup final based on, like a toenail being offside, based on VAR, it'd be a really, really tough one to take. I know by, again, the letter of the law, it would be offside's offside, but it would just be very frustrating. In my opinion, it takes away from the excitement of what you have in the Irish League. But I mean, I've just got so much I could say about this, to be honest. I'm not a fan.
There's two parts to this. First off is the decision to bring it in for this final 2 weeks beforehand without any prior warning that there would be this alteration in how the game is going to be refereed. It's not going to be a total change, but there's this new layer of VAR. The other side is bringing, of course, VAR at all. Let's talk about the decision to announce this 2 or so weeks before the final. That seems to have taken a lot of people off guard.
Yeah, well, I mean, Nifl have had a couple of meetings recently with the clubs, as in when I say meetings, they've have like a general meeting, and they've had that a few weeks ago where clubs were present, and this wasn't discussed at that, and then they obviously had the event a couple of weeks ago at Stormont, and you would have thought that these two events would have been the perfect place to talk to clubs, get opinions, float this idea out there to say, what about this as an option? Why don't we trial VAR? I mean, everyone knows that post split, we have usually a round of absolute dead rubbers. Like, there's usually like a game where you get the kids running out for many clubs, or there's not much on the line. Is that not more of a right time to trial something like this rather than a high stake game which gets you into the playoff final for Europe? So there's a lot more. They've like said, look at this final. It has so much jeopardy on the line, but we're going to do something that we've never done before and hope it goes well. And it could just be so costly for someone. It's bonkers. I don't understand it. I don't know why they thought that this was a good idea. And is it going to be, from the outset, listening to the Jared's interview at the weekend on BBC, he mentioned there's no cost, so it just sounds like they've been offered it as a trial by maybe a company who are trying to get them to take it on, and they've decided, okay, let's do it, but sure, we'll put it in a final. It just doesn't sit right with me.
It's if you game plan it out. So if the final goes ahead with this VAR and it plays absolutely zero role, nothing is checked, nothing is impacted game wise due to VAR, then, well, what was the point of that? And the other side of it is if it makes a really big call, either positively or negatively, in the sense of it makes a call that people think maybe is too pernickety or misses one, that's where it's going to cause, or at least some people are claiming it's going to cause consternation, and they feel frustrated about it. Your manager at the Glens had plenty to say. It must be noted.
Yeah, he wasn't happy about it. He said that he found out 3 minutes before it was announced. I was listening to Jared's interview on the radio at the time, and he says we've spoken to both clubs, and they agreed with the decision. And I was shocked to hear him say that, because that was, I certainly hadn't heard anything about that. So then to hear, but these conversations can happen. Maybe someone has had a conversation somewhere, it's been slipped in, or it wasn't a formal process. So these things can happen. So, but then to hear that from the manager himself that wasn't the case at the club, or at least he wasn't informed by this, and then to hear Linfield back that up and then say the same thing, it's bizarre to me. I don't really know who Jared Lawler thinks that he's had the conversations with, or if the clubs weren't informed, then why weren't they? Do you not think that the two biggest stakeholders in all of this should have been asked, their opinion on it, to see if they want it? And if both says no, let's leave things how they are. Now, I was of the opinion that if, for example, Jared Lawler or whoever, it's not necessarily him, but he might not be having the conversations himself, but some sort of person at Niffle has a conversation with the clubs and says, we have the opportunity to bring in VAR here. Do you want it? I wouldn't have been surprised if they went ahead. The club said, well, okay, go for it, even if they didn't really want to, because if they say no and then there's a contentious decision against them, then it's the whole oh, you had the opportunity to bring in VAR and you didn't do it. Now, In Gerard's defence, he did say that on his BBC interview. He says, could you imagine if we didn't take the opportunity and then something happened as well, to put it on them? He's like, we would have been like, well, why did you do it for the good of the league? But now we're doing it. So I suppose that they're maybe caught between a rock and a hard place. But there is a loophole out of that. And that's to ask the opinions of the clubs and see what they actually want in a formal process, and maybe give them an opportunity to speak to the fans. Or but I don't recall this ever being a question in the fan survey. Maybe I'm wrong. To see if fans wanted VAR, and I think the opinion is pretty clear that it's no.
I'm going to go to a tweet from Neil Coleman, who, for those who don't know, was he head of comms or kind of a
Yeah, he was the head of press and digital, so he was like over the whole of communications, and he's left, and it's a bit different
he's
now.
since left. He said some serious knickers in a twist about VAR in the Irish League. So this is someone who's been within the structure of NIFL, knows what their strategy is, the thinking there. There's been dozens of international and European club games, he says, with VAR that have come and gone in Northern Ireland without a fuss. Progress is good. Standing still and waiting around for the good old days to return isn't viable. This is the crux of this, isn't it? That we have a strong presence of people who feel very connected to tradition. They see VAR as a move away from that. They've seen how in other leagues like the Premier League, perhaps it hasn't gone to their liking. And I would say there's two circles here when it comes to tradition and progressive. And then if you go down to how people are kind of similarly squared when it comes to maybe how you view the league schedule, I don't see VAR as one of those issues where if you feel as though you're someone that wants change in the league, VAR is one of the big flags that you're waving. I think if I was talking to someone who would describe them as a traditionalist, I wouldn't find many people who would be VAR positive. But in that grouping of people, and whatever size you think they are within fans or within clubs, I don't know for all of them how many of them would be VAR positive.
Yeah, I mean, everyone goes to the Premier League version of VAR, which is probably the top level. And you've heard it so many times that the technology is not the problem; it's the people who use it, which is fair enough. The technology obviously works because effectively it just records what happened, zooms in, slows down, gives you the opportunity to read it. But if you look around Europe, this is not just so it's not just. I know people watch Premier League and they think it's rubbish because you get so many goals chalked off, or you know it takes a wee bit of excitement. Let's be honest, it adds a wee bit of excitement too. There's nothing funnier than seeing a team that you don't want to win get a goal chalked off because of VAR, especially if it happens multiple times. However, you go around the likes of Germany, they absolutely hate it. There was an article actually on BBC only a couple of weeks ago, going around all the leagues in Europe and talking about, VAR interventions and statistics around the success rate and what the fans are like in terms of their reaction. And none of the fans in the leagues are interested in this. I don't think it's a case of standing still because VAR is in progress for me. I think it turns football into completely different sort of sport, a wee bit over analytical. Now, like I heard them talk about the other option that they had, which I mean, I understand why they didn't go for this because this would have been completely mad, is that they were looking at the Malta model, which was that the managers would each get two challenges each.
Yes.
Which, I just think that would have been, that's them bringing in a whole different scope to the final, which would have been mad. So I think if the 50-50 between the two, I think they made the right choice in going for the one they
Maybe
did.
maybe for the final, but let's just walk through that idea of the challenges version of it because there is other sports, rugby, cricket, a variety. At least I know in American football. I'm trying to think what other American sports may have this, but you look at them and some of those have this stop-start nature anyway built into them. So if there needs to be a challenge in American football, well, the touchdown has happened, it's stopped, and it either counts or it's not. So, for example, if we were some of the previous incidents that were brought up by Jared Lawler was the non-goal for Linfield, or the ghost goal of Windsor, I call it, this season. You also have one that was brought up, I think, by Kyle Neal. He was sitting beside me during Sports Sound talking about it was it is it Glentoran against Portadown that cup final 2015?
Yeah, that was yeah.
So you have a incident where goals given, Portadown are given off about it at Windsor Park. That could have been a challenge and reviewed via a replay. You talk about that incident in that cup final, which you're talking about, where see, but then again, was Galt not was adjudged to be not fouled? But then you get into what can be reviewed. Can you review that red card? Can you review a non-penalty? Things like that. But does that not kind of fix the big incident problem? Because if people are worried about the pernickety stuff, that goes out the window if it's pretty much there as a fail-safe in a way.
If it were to go down the VAR route, I think that the challenges sounds like a good idea, in the wider scope of things, because you're not having like five, six, seven, eight challenges a game or things to check the
Like
game.
it'd be
So
really
that I
annoying
think
if we're
that
getting into like corner kicks and stuff like that.
well, that's what they're bringing in. This is exactly what they're bringing in next year. The have announced IFAB, is that the name of the referee body, have announced that they are bringing in like they're looking at corners and free kicks and throw-ins and stuff like that on VAR next year. So it's just becoming a whole different game altogether. I think that the challenges would be a good idea if it was to ever come in the Irish League, because then you're not slowing the game down that much. But I don't think you could bring it in a one-off game, especially a final, because in my opinion, then um managers would probably need training on, or how it works, if you know what I mean. And then what are you going to get? Our team's going to start hiring VAR coaches to spot things that they think that are dodgy decisions, and rule them out. But I think that it's you bring
The
up
answer
that
is yes, by the
Portadown,
way,
Glen,
but continue.
like a throwing coach. But what you bring up that Portadown Glentoran game, that was another experiment, because if you remember, there was extra officials at that game.
Oh,
They, that Raymond Krangle was staring at it that day. He was staring at the incident because
remember
they had
when you
officials
had you
behind the
had the
net.
refs staring at the boxes?
Yeah, exactly. So that was another experiment. Is they'll bring in these extra officials, and there was a huge blunder. That was, as Ronnie McFall let us all know, it should have been a straight red card. We went up the other end of the pitch and scored. So, they've experimented in a final there, and they messed up, and that really, really cost Portadown, because they would have got Europe that year. I think they got relegated the following season. I think it's just, yeah. So it just shows you that these experiments don't always work, and it's especially in a high jeopardy game like that.
You were talking there about the people who are going to have to work with this technology. This seems to be a sore point with some of the people who go out, suit themselves out in black or whatever color it is, and grab the whistle at the weekend. Two referees reportedly pulling out, and the reason is that they weren't happy about this announcement, because isn't it going to be Scottish referees on this occasion are going to be the main people looking after things at the final?
Yeah, well, why would the referees not consulted on this if that was the case? I mean, maybe they were. I don't think they were. From what Gerard Lawler was very keen to distance himself, with their IFA employees. You know what I mean? It was like all very much, he was letting us know that they're employed by IFA, which is fair enough. But these discussions should have been had. Do you want this? If we have it now, I get the reasoning is apparently that because they don't have an opportunity, it limits them because they don't have an opportunity to be the VAR officials, because there's only a couple of referees in the Irish League that have it, and you need it to go on and referee in UEFA games and stuff. So why are they not being offered the opportunity to train on that, and why are they not being consulted before it gets brought in? Because it impacts them, and I get it. I do get it. It's not. You wouldn't like your effectively, you could look at it as, does it change the conditions of your employment? It just brings in a whole different aspect to the job that you do. So I completely understand, and that is dangerous for Niffle. In my opinion, they can put up with Declan Devine complaining, or David Healy, or anyone, whoever it was at Linfield, complaining. But if the referees start turning on them, especially en masse, like they wouldn't even release the name of the referee for somebody's game until quite late. I think they were concerned that he might be persuaded to pull out. I just think that it's a really risky business.
Niffle are showing their hand here in that the scenario which you played out could be exactly what's happened here, is that it's been offered for them for free. They want to try it. They see this as a big game, a lot of pressure. Let's see, let's stress test it, whilst also looking at it and saying, is this really that bizarre? You have Larn having had a number of VAR games and playing in Europe last year. We've seen VAR work for internationals and other games at Windsor Park. So it's not like this is some completely foreign tech. They have got experience in the arena where this game's going to be played. It will have an impact or it won't. But ultimately, this is supposed to help what we all want to see, help fairness and help accountability and help reflect to the best extent you can exactly what's happening on the pitch, rather than a stray handball not being picked up, a offside not being given, or potentially a red card not being shown, which could have impacted the game. Are we not for games to be called correctly?
Yeah, of course, but it doesn't. This doesn't lead to that because whilst the technology works, the human aspect doesn't always work. So it's like, you're not guaranteed. Of course, it might increase the probability of that happening, but we see it like if this is Scottish, if this is the Scottish system. By all accounts, I'm not a massive Scottish football fan. I would watch the odd game if it's on TV, but I have a lot of friends here, Scottish football fans, and by all accounts, the VAR system over there is absolutely shambolic. And I have seen a lot of clips because you know what it's like. You get your algorithm throws you up all these clips, and it's some of the decisions are absolutely baffling. I don't know how they're rewatching it back and saying, and it almost adds to the controversy because the referee gets that wrong on the pitch, and real speed. Then you're going, okay, well, well, no one does say okay, fair enough, but at the same time, it is understandable. But when you've no excuse for getting it wrong whenever it's slowed down. Now, hopefully, it does help the referees if they do go ahead with it. But again, I just think in such a high jeopardy game, it is risky, because there's nothing to say that it is going to get it right. But it also takes, for me, it takes the enjoyment out of the game of it. I think that it's going to be a lot of like, who knows, maybe they'll not even use it that often in the game. But there's a potential for a good bit of standing around. The players are not going to be used to it. The managers are not going to be used to it, and the fans aren't going to be used to it, and neither are the officials. The officials aren't going to be used to it on the pitch because, from my understanding, it's going to be RC officials on the pitch, but it's VAR officials that are doing it from probably from their base in Glasgow or whatever, rather than bringing it like coming over here themselves.
It's again something that we all expected to come our way, and it's been floated, talked about. Not the first time we've talked about the concept of VAR coming to the Irish League, but this is the first real test of it. You've got to admit, in some shape or some form, VAR feels Irish League bound no matter what in the next 3 years.
I don't know, but the costs that are floated about for it sound absolutely astronomical. Like they really, like I've heard millions of pounds mentioned. Where's that money coming from? I've heard that there's huge costs involved in the technology. Apparently, because League of Ireland don't have it, they've never even floated. Like they're way ahead of us. I'm assuming that they're a much richer league as well. So I just don't know how. But then you suppose you look at the Maltese league, they wouldn't be as.
I've never looked at the Maltese League as much as this weekend.
Yeah, that's true. I have because we played a Maltese team in Europe a few years ago, but they yeah, I just don't get it. That the idea that
It
it
must
might
be a
come,
refereeing centre of excellence.
it must be. But I don't understand how it comes here in the next few years. I know that Mick McDermott sort of talked about this VAR light. We've heard it on. I've listened to podcasts before where they talked about it. For our league, and I think that even that Hawkeye system they use for the goal line technology is by all accounts quite expensive. Um, and again, there's not really that many goal line issues in our league. I don't think that to justify the spend. Um, I'm not sure that it is inevitable that it comes our way. I think that maybe, I mean, for Niffle to agree to this, maybe I'm way off here. Maybe for Niffle to agree to this, they've said, well, what are your financial packages like to see if it's actually achievable long term? Because there's no point in taking the trial if you're not gonna look at it long term. but I just personally don't see it. Um, but who knows? I don't think every ground would be kept. I don't know. Like, how are you going to get, say they like Anna United get promoted, or it's well within the rights. There's so many teams in the league. Like Cumber Rector getting floodlights now, so they maybe, what if they go on a mad surge and end up in the top division, or it's stranger things have happened, and you're thinking, well, how do you get it at these grounds, or even other Premier League grounds? You look around, is Dungannon going to be able to fit in VAR? It just doesn't make sense to me.
There's just so many questions on how this looks and in what form will it be. It does make this an even more interesting and unique League Cup final, and it's another move from Niffle saying, we're here to try things out. We want to be bold, and also, I feel like it's another statement of intent compared to their, let's call them brothers/sisters at the IFA. That, look, we're here to try and change things up and be bold, and some fans are keen to see the league do just that.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like I've been on this podcast before talking about, I think we just experiment with loads of things, like kickoff times, um, days we played, the season move, the summer football. I'm up for changing, or up for trying absolutely everything and anything, and I'm not dead set against trying VAR on a trial. But like I say, those post-split dead rubber games, or something like one of the early rounds of the League Cup, or something with a wee bit less jeopardy, probably would have been the time to try it, and then we could have said, "Nah, that's Wick Bennett." Yeah, like I say, I'm not for the technology coming into the league, because I think it slows it down. But if they want to try it out, fair enough. It is entirely up to them to do so, but not in a final.
It makes it just even more interesting, it must be said. Now, League Cup final, what, a week and a half away, probably by the time you're listening to this, maybe less. And it's just, at the minute, two of the biggest teams in the country. But Matthew, you're here because title race, it's on. It's a thing. And we should probably go back a few days. We'll not spend too much time on it. But it was Larne and the Blues at Inver Park. And the question was, were the Blues going to hold up their end of the deal for the likes of yourself and Coleraine by making sure that Larne don't win? And they did just that. Leroy Miller scores and also gets a red card. Would that have been revoked if there was VAR? We don't know. Again, another hard watch, and it's one of many hard watches which we'll probably talk about in this podcast. Just a typical Larne Blues game. A draw, and not a particularly entertaining one.
Yeah, I mean, it was a game that I was keeping a close eye on for obvious reasons. And when I seen that Larne went down to 10 men, I thought that maybe Linfield would nick it. And to be honest with you, I would have taken anything in that game except for a Larne win. And because I know that a Linfield win would have dragged them into the title race good and proper, but at the same time, I still think Larne are a wee bit beyond us right now. But I just think that would have really, really damaged them if they had lost that game. But the draw's good because it's two draw points for each team. As you say, bit of a slog. It's hard when you see these games, they're very rarely massively entertaining. I know the Glens and Larne a few weeks ago was probably the most entertaining in a while, for probably not necessarily footballing reasons. It wasn't exactly a show of total football, but there was plenty going on. But these games here, like, I've watched so many of these games, and it's just been two teams really that don't want to lose, and that's became the norm over recent seasons. Like, when was the last Linfield Larne game that we've seen that was an absolute thriller? It's been a while. I couldn't tell you. I think they all sort of end up low scoring or draws.
What's the most interesting one, like around near Halloween a couple of years ago, where Bonus scored at Windsor Park? Maybe it's like 3-1 Larne in the first season they won the league, because it was very much those two who felt like was going for the title. That's the one I can at least remember. The other ones have been completely deleted from my mind. It was another collection of Niffle TV games. Maybe that's how they'll pay for all this VAR. £10, £8 at a time. 3 games on offer that night. I took in Larne Linfield, but they could have watched Cliftonville get thumped by your boys, or maybe Ballymena against the worst kit selection ever in Glenavon. That was 2-2. 4-0 against Cliftonville. I'll say this, out of the four teams that are chasing the Gibson Cup now, your lot are doing what champions you feel like they do, and that's duff teams. You're doing that more than often.
Well, there was a monkey on the back of Glenavon during his time at the Glens, and it was that we didn't hammer anybody. Like, even when we played like Dergview in the Cup or in the Shield or lower league teams, we only ever won one or two goals to the good. We never really went out and really hammered someone. We've got that monkey well and truly off the back this year because we are being absolutely ruthless now. Pat Hooben plays a part in that, but there's just
I was just gonna say that the monkey catcher is
yeah, he's
his name is
absolutely
Pat.
he's lethal. He's absolutely it's not Patrick Hooben, it's Hattrick Hooben because he just absolutely loves goals and but you have to put them on a plate. He's scoring the goals that we were missing last year. There was a frustration earlier in the season that the Glens weren't really creating a lot of awfully good chances at times, whereas that's sort of changed now. Done good recruitment and they are creating plenty. And that game last week against Cliftonville was Glentoran in the most relentless and best form. They came out in the second half flying. Like, didn't even think they were that bad in the first half, to be honest. I thought that the first sort of 20 minutes, both teams were really going at each other. And then the Glens just really turned it on second half. And Jordan Stewart came on and lit the place up. He was absolutely phenomenal. It was like, how dare you put me on the bench? And he was great. I compared it to like a Paul Gascoigne-esque performance because the ball just stuck to his feet. Everything stuck for him, one of those games. And he and Ross Clark were both fantastic. Ross Clark for the whole game as well. And the likes Aaron McInnes stepped it up second half too. So it was really, really good to see. Really, really, really enjoyable. And Marshall Gillespie tweeted after I was going back through looking at the wins that we've had at Solitude, but mine only go back to 2000. I could only find stats back to 2004, and he said it was 2002 was the last time that we scored that many at Solitude. So fantastic.
And it looked like a really full away end, which we will come to later. For your lot, like, is there a certain feeling in East Belfast, fingers crossed, toes crossed, that at least this feels fun?
Oh yeah, I mean this is people, but I mean, someone said, "Oh, this is the best I've felt in years," and I said, "Well, it's the best we've felt since around this time last year, before we got beat by Cliftonville in the League Cup final." But I mean, spirits are high because when I look at the Glentoran squad, I think it's the strongest, but also the most complete. As in, it's just every position has a tick box beside it in a long, long time. Like I'm even going back to when we were winning titles. We won the title in 2009. There were still a few weaknesses maybe in that team. Whereas now you're looking and you've got players who can come in and replace other players. You're maybe looking at the centre forward and thinking, well, if Pat Hooban was to get injured, then that would be an issue. But I think that's the case for any team. If you've got a top striker and you lose that top striker, except for Lauren, because they did lose that top striker and then they ended up with just still going about 6-7 points clear at the top of the league. But I think that you take away the top goal scorer in any team, and they're going to have an issue. But really well stacked. Not getting carried away because, like I say, we were in a similar position last year. But the best thing for me is if we do drop points or if we do lose a game, we just get back up on the horse. We're not letting the whole thing just fall apart. We're just getting in there, getting back onto the pitch, and winning convincingly, which is brilliant. And it's not something we've seen a lot from Glentoran teams over the last number of years.
It absolutely is not, and it's fair to say maybe you're happy to pay it, but I would not want to know what Patrick Hooben's goal bonus might be. But he's definitely got a nice little collection now. He's top goal scorer in the league. He added all the cup ones, and it's a pretty tasty affair. He continued that on Saturday. I appreciate we're going to be bouncing around here now, but we'll jump to Saturday just because we're on Glentoran. And you thump the Sorry Crews. That's a whipping of both North Belfast teams. Slightly different ebbs there, but you really did go through the gears. It's another victory at home, and it's been talked about here and elsewhere. You have a load of home games to go. You've even got a home game in the Cup against Larne. That is going to have to become a fortress. There's going to be silverware come your way at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's a real shame that the pitch is just cut up so badly. It's really, really choppy. which might be a good thing against Lauren on Saturday or on Friday. Sorry, but I think that the pitch is really bumpy. When you get down close, you can see. But like Decky was saying it in his post match interview, he mentions it every week. The groundsman's done an absolutely incredible job for it to even look like a pitch. But you can't really do much about those bumps until the summer. So that could be interesting to see how the pitch holds up with so many home games. Although the weather seems to have taken a wee bit of a change. However, in terms of the performance on Saturday, um, first half the Glens could have been several goals to the good as it was, but then the game, in my opinion, ended as a contest after the horrendous tackle by Forsyth on Marcus Keane. Not good, and yeah, it just left
The
Lauren with that.
sound didn't help. One of those, you know,
Oh yeah, I know.
it's a tackle. Everyone's silent, and everyone goes whoa, and that big whack.
The fans
That's
are
that's the
were
red card
livid.
there.
Yeah, and it left Cruz with an absolute mountain to climb in the second half. And yeah, I think it Pat Hooban just scored a hat trick from a combined yardage of about 10 yards. The pick of the bunch being the last goal from Liam Burt. That was a lovely finish. Uh,
The only way I could describe his look after scoring that goal was scundered. He was like, "Oh well, I guess
yeah,
that went in."
yeah, no, I don't. It was definitely not a. I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he was trying to score, but he didn't look afterwards like he was overly convinced. But it was no, it was an absolute cracker. The game in general, like, the Glens could have scored. It could have been another Carrick game, to be honest, or beyond that. And they were extremely disappointed to concede late on. Kamsin Kamara just got sloppy as you do when you're 5-0 up, and he was absolutely gutted. I'm sure he's seen his reaction for the clean sheet to go. But its goals are massive for the Glens now in terms of getting the goal difference up because we're way behind in that front.
Yeah,
And I don't think it is possible to sort of catch the teams ahead of us in terms of the goal difference. I think it's pretty hefty, but it does no harm by going out and obviously as well. You need to take into consideration you're about to play the other five top teams in the league, so you're not going to go out and necessarily hammer them. But yeah, I think that we're not looking great behind Larne and maybe even Linfield in terms of the goals, the goal difference. But it does no harm to go out and do our best to try and smash a few past them. And of course, if you do manage to go out and grab a few goals against Linfield or Larne, then it's a double whammy, isn't it?
yeah, and you've got Cliftonville again, so that's a positive. You can maybe fire a few against them as well. Who has been of this nice little Glentoran uptick, which feels like there's a bit more solidity with it? Who's the unsung hero? Because we've been talking about Jordan Stewart since the start of the season. Hubin's obviously the main man there. A lot of people are probably going to give McAneff a bit of a rub because he's come in. But is there anybody that's going under the radar as just a real key piece to this team?
Well, not at Glentoran, he's not, but Cammy Palmer has been absolutely outstanding this season, and I mean, it's going to be hard now because he's got 27 goals to look past party Patrick Hubin for Player of the Year at the end of the year, but Cammy has won multiple Player of the Month awards and was the player on everyone's lips for Player of the Year. Recently, he has been fantastic. He's really slotted into. He was always trying to play as like a number eight more so. He's more into that number six role recently, taking the pressure off him from getting forward as much, which he's played to your strengths and he's been brilliant. He's been really, really good. He really, really plays that role well. So he's got a lot of energy. He's a really strong tackler of the ball, and I always said it. I always loved that he got stuck in, could win a ball back, and I just thought that why would you waste that ability and trying to put him on the edge of the 18-yard box because he's only scored something like three goals for the Glens, two of them coming this season. But I really he's been brilliant. But that I have to take my hat off to Ross Clark for coming into the Glens, and everyone was shaking their head and thinking this guy's finished. We can't even get a game for the Cruise. He isn't in the squad some weeks. Why the Glen signed him. He's came in and he's been like the Ross Clark that I used to see torture us every single time he played the Cruise. Like I hated seeing him in the starting lineup for Crusaders because he gave us a terrible time. There was one year at the Oval, it was just post split, and they beat us four, like maybe even 4-0 or 4-1. He got all four assists. He's the player who used to give Marcus Keane the biggest headache, and there wasn't too many players that did that a month ago, but he was. So fair play to him. He's been brilliant, and you would never have thought that he would be the person keeping, the signing that everyone had their eyes on in January. Josh Daniels, he's keeping him on the bench, and so that's credit to Ross. And I think he's cup tied for the final, which is a shame, but that'll be Josh Daniels' chance to stake his claim.
Jump in. Well, I think it also proves once again you need a squad, particularly at that top end of the pitch. I do have to ask: are fans not turning to themselves and saying, "Why didn't we just play Canson Kamara at the very start of the season?"
Yeah, well, he sort of came in on loan and wasn't quite up to speed, I don't think. He was playing at a fairly low level when he was on because okay, so he's on loan from Lincoln, is it? And if you look at his teams that he's played for before, they're pretty random. He's only 19, no, he's just turned 20, but he has been brilliant. Now, don't get me wrong, he's young. There's that slight naivety. Young players make mistakes, no doubt about it. But he is brilliant. He's really aggressive in the tackle. He was so strong, and he's really good in the air. At both ends of the pitch. I really like him. He looks angry all the time. He it's when he interviews, he looks like he wouldn't want to be absolutely anywhere else in the world. But he's by all accounts, he's not really like that off the pitch. But I really like him. I think he's brilliant, and it would be a coup if we could keep hold of him. But I'm sure he's out of contract at his club at the end of the season, so he'll be keeping his options open and maybe looking for a move somewhere in England. But again, at the start of the season, Shane McElhinney was playing really well for the Glens initially. And I know obviously it was tough because the Glens defence had such a older age, average age. I think is there's multiple 30-year-olds in it. Not that can be a problem. Whereas Kamson Kamara adds that wee bit of athleticism. He's got legs, and I really enjoy watching him. Him and Marcus Keane are without a doubt the first two names in the team sheet when it comes to naming your defence.
He definitely has legs. Let's flip to the other team in this game. Another thumping for the Crews. We'll get round to what's rumbling in Mid-Ulster, but everything feels down around that club. Defensively, they're dreadful, and they're not getting a break at all. Yeah, they've had all these flashes up top, but that feels like months ago now, and the sweat is on the show road.
They're in trouble. They looked in trouble early in the season, and then they started to get a few wins together, and I thought, oh, well, they'll be okay. But no, they are definitely the worst team that we've played this season. When we've sort of had a strange run of games against them because they give us a game on more than one occasion this year. Um, but that was shocking on Saturday, and looking at their other results and watching them in highlights, it isn't much better most other weeks, to be honest. So I would say that they are in danger, and that's the risk of having such a young team as well. They don't have, like, they need someone to drag them out of that hole, and two of the players that maybe would have done that, the Glens signed them in January, which won't do them any favors. And yeah, I think it would be a great five-a-side team because they've got some players. Like, sometimes you watch the highlights, and some of their players, were like it's like that Joga Bonito ad that used to go about there. Like the old Nike adverts. Very skillful, but they're just not the guys maybe you want to go into battle for you. Yeah, I just think that the squad, the Crusaders have just ditched all of their everything that the club is built on, and they've went in like entirely different direction, and it just hasn't worked. And I have to be honest, I'm really surprised that Decky Goodell is still clinging on there, to be honest. But I don't know. Maybe they're thinking, well, what's the point at this stage in getting rid of a club legend? But they need to do something because they're in trouble.
I've had almost the same conversation a number of times over the past few days, actually, and a part of it, I believe, is that it's just not in the Crew's DNA, at least not recently, in that they're so used to the way things have been done with Baxter, They are trusting the process here with Cadell, and ultimately, how much influence has he been able to have on recruitment? And for any team, you're going to live or die by your recruitment. You're right. You see these flashes. Oftentimes, you see teams, and you think it's pretty much all even from back to front in this league, and sometimes it's just about those difference makers at the top of the pitch that can get you anywhere from sometimes 11th up to 5th. For the Crews, it's been their problem all term. Teams go from one end of the pitch to the other and just slice through them like butter. That midfield is sometimes non-existent. The back line just doesn't have that grit and that stability, made worse by injuries, by the fact that Jonathan Rourke leaves, and their heads are down. And that's the scariest part. 8 games to go, and you see other teams around them, particularly the team chasing them, and they look anything but. And so much of the talk over the past few months has been, yeah, Crews aren't great, but at least they've got these strikers, and realistically, they're probably lucky that there is a Glenavon in this league and that there is one other team who is worse, or if not worse, they've got so many points they can't claw that back. Glenavon have clawed it back. Not fully, because the Crews have a game in hand, but they're there. It's in Glenavon's hands.
I am absolutely fully invested in this. After every single week, the first result I look for is Glenavon's and Crusaders every week now. I think it is great. This is making up for the absolute bore that was last season, and I think that it has been. I think it's been a brilliant
title race. We're back. Relegation race. We're back.
VAR. We're here.
VAR. We're back. Come on. Just need if there was a manager change, it would just complete the madness that has been 2026 so far.
We're a registration right away from peak Irish
We absolutely are. Points deduction. Yeah, any of that type of stuff. We've had, floodlights go off. We've had flooded pitches. 2026 has been off the charts.
It's been brilliant, and it really is making up for last year. And plenty of goals in the league as well. I remember last year there was something like 150 fewer goals throughout the league. The weekend was absolutely crazy for red cards. So it's brilliant. I'm fully invested. But back to the point of Glenavon are chasing them down. It is so exciting to see that there is a proper relegation battle. I think that Glenavon are going to go. Whether they stay up or not is one thing, but I think they're going to get out of that 12th position, even on a temporary basis here. In a few weeks' time, there's some really exciting games coming up for them. And yeah, it's going to be one thing. You know what? I shout out to the Crusaders fans. No matter how grim it gets for them, they never seem to really lose the head. They never boo their team off. It's phenomenal to see, because a lot of them would be used to a lot of success over the last decade or two, and they never really turn on them. So that's, it's respect for that.
Well, let's talk a bit about Glenavon now, because they have clawed back a 7-point. They've taken away at least a 7-point deficit down to 3 points now, and that's thanks within a week. They beat Bangor last Saturday 3-1 away from home. They draw against Ballymena away from home 2-2. And then a game I was at for the radio, they took Portadown to the woodshed. Maybe it was helped by the fact that Portadown didn't really turn up, but they executed when it counted. And I mean, outside of maybe a 10-15 minute spell at the start of the game where it felt even and Portadown were getting a bit of success on the break, Glenavon looked better on the ball. They were able to craft chances. They looked more hungry, better in the tackle. And strangely, for a team that looked so devoid of talent earlier on this season, and then they lose McDade, they even lost O'Connor. There they are, set up with maybe the hottest young striker in the league in McGovern. You have the ever defendable Peter Campbell there in behind them. You have Nathaniel Ferris just bullying defenders. And then you have a resurgent Connor Falls, who's been grabbing goals on the other side, who'll happily run the channels and offer something more. That is not a worst team in the league quadruple there. And it must be said, maybe it's all been a bit of bum and bluster. It's been a 1 week high point, but I don't see it now. I think Glenavon are going to be safe.
Peter Campbell's massive for Glenavon. To see him back
Huge.
on his best form for them is absolutely massive. Really important player, a player that I've always really liked watching. And then Paul McGovern. I was down at Mournview just a few weeks ago now, to be honest, and he was brilliant. 18 years of age. I'd be amazed if he does not end up over across the water this summer. There'll be plenty of offers on the table, but he's out of contract. But I think that Glenavon, you see, momentum is huge, and they've got it now. They've got the momentum, and I just think it'll take them. I can see them getting a lot of points in the split. I really can. I just think that they'll fear no one, because they've nothing to lose really. They're just clawing these points back.
Because when you get to the split, you see sometimes these lethargic teams. You can use whatever cliche you want on the beach or whatever. And I think this Mid Ulster Derby, where you'd think both teams would be up for it, is a really good example of the type of teams they'll play. And I just don't know if that was Crusaders going against Portadown. Would they have been able to do what Glenavon did? Glenavon have this wiliness to them throughout, and yeah, they can be a tiny bit lax at the back, and they can get caught and all the rest. But I don't see Crusaders specifically being able to get down and battle in these games. You even look at that 2-2 against Ballymena. It went back and forward, and Glenavon stuck it out. You look at exactly the same litmus test midweek going away to Ballymena, and Denton Cadell, for what felt like one of the first times this season, was out pretty much lambasting his players to the media. They are on to different trajectories. Now, is it going to be Crusaders, if Glenavon continue this momentum, who are sitting 12th? It looks the most likely, but as you said, with the split coming up, these teams face off against each other, and one or two could just continue to slide. But I really don't want to get too hyperbolic about it. But like they had 9 points to get in the past week, and they got 7. And it helps because of the teams they were playing. The game before this run was a game against Linfield, and it's not going to be easy street. They've played one more game than others between now and the split. But I was very impressed by them. Not any kind of world beaters, but they've got what's really important. Skill where it matters, a little bit of quality, fight, and players who are really working towards something. Outside the fact that they obviously are buying into this whole process and that they want the team to stay up. You have some young, hungry players, the likes of McGarrigan and others, High Murphy, etc., Sean Carlin. But you have Connor Falls with something to prove. Nathaniel Ferris, always a fighter with something to prove, and he looked it on Saturday. McGovern looking to take that next step up, and then you have their talisman, Peter Campbell, looking to go back up to being a highly touted player, which he was a season or two ago, has had those moments where he's fallen off, maybe struggled with fitness. And home form's going to be important, but I usually see bottom 6 teams on my travels. Give O'Connor a bit of credit here. Give the people that brought that all together a bit of credit here. Look, Crusaders can go and win another game, and then it's 6 points with the same amount the game is played. But until we see those games, I am strongly backing Glenavon against the Crews. They've got 2 games against the Crews, and not only do I think they look just better, I think they're a bad matchup for the Crews as well, because I think they will exploit that soft underbelly which we've seen with the Crews.
Well, I think you could probably compare the Cruise a wee bit to how Portadown defended at the weekend. To be honest, it was. I mean, I think the Cruise front line would have probably punished Portadown with the way they defended at the weekend, as well. But I agree. I think that Glenavon are set up perfectly to punish them. They will take a lot of delight from the fact that I think Crusaders game in hand is against Cliftonville. So Cliftonville that hammered Crusaders only a couple of weeks ago. So I think that they'll take a lot of positivity from that. But at the end of the day, it's out of Glenavon's hands. It's in Crusaders' hands, and Crusaders could maybe take a wee bit of something from that. But I just don't see it. I think that, like I say, momentum, and I think momentum is going to carry Glenavon into the split. I think that one of their games left is against Larne, which is obviously going to be difficult. But I can tell you now, I'm glad we don't have to play them. You know,
Yeah,
I'm,
they're an absolute spanner in the works, and I don't know how true this is. I haven't done the whole formulations, but someone at Mournview said that Glenavon might have upwards of 4 home games in the split.
well,
Might,
I mean, that you don't want to play. I hate playing at Mournview at the best times. Not because lovely wee ground, terrible place to go and try and win a game of football. Even when Glenavon were poor this season, they beat us, and then they gave us a really good game. And probably should have got something from it. Back in January. So I think that Lauren will be looking at that one too and thinking, and I think it's a late kickoff. It's under the lights at Moorview Park. They will have a crowd at it. It's just before the split, so I think that if the Cruise can, if the Glenavon can beat the Cruise here, in a couple of weeks' time, and then they go into that Lauren game, anything can happen. Like I say, they beat Linfield earlier in the season too, so you just do not know.
mention crowd, gotta give a big shout out. If only all Irish League games were like this. Two teams who, yeah, Portadown have won two recently, and Glenavon had got a win and a draw in that week, but neither team are particularly pulling up trees. Well, there's many young fans as well. Big section behind the goal, giving it stacks for Glenavon, singing away with like half an hour, 40 minutes for kickoff. The Portadown end were giving it stacks too. I'm like, this is an atmosphere. This is great. And it did make me think, we all know Linfield Glentoran, biggest game in football, Northern Ireland. There's a big rivalry there. But from a rivalry point of view, you rarely see players play for both these teams. They haven't always been in the same division in the past few years. They've both kind of been whipping boys for the other, I guess, this century. Where does Portadown Glenavon rank in rivalries within Irish League football? It feels too high to go to. But, like, what other rivalries have this much usually at stake? Fans really into it, atmosphere, what's on the line. Like, I know Cliftonville and Cruise would have been kind of be seen as the second biggest game, but it doesn't feel that way, or at least it didn't feel that way when I thought about it on Saturday.
Yeah, well, I mean, Cliftonville bring a huge crowd to these big games, so that can maybe skew things a bit. I went there. There was one Boxing Day that the Glens and Blues called off at the Oval, and I went to Cliftonville Cruise at Seaview. I think it was the first year of the plastic pitch. Me and half the rest, and most of the rest of the league, to be honest with you, there was loads of games called off that day, and there was like 5 red cards.
That
Um,
was bonkers, that game.
yeah, it was crazy, and that was a feisty game. And I thought this is a really good derby. And I watched the game a couple of years ago, it was pretty similar, around maybe the last game of the season. But I think that Portadown Glenavon would be right up there. I always like the Ballymena Korean game. Very very unpredictable derby. Um,
Yes, but is it an actual heated, you
yeah,
know,
I know what you mean. There's a
like
lot of
I might go Blues Glens, I might then go Blues Reds, and then maybe Mid Ulster. But again, everyone thinks,
see Linfield don't even like. There's so often that Linfield wouldn't sell out the away end at Solitude, which I think dilutes
well, we
that a
saw
bit.
that on Sunday.
Yeah, well, they announced it was. Did they announce it was sold out too? Don't know, but yeah, it was. I just think that dilutes that because, and I get it. It's the nonsense they had to go through for so many years to get there. That so many of their fans don't go. Um, but yeah, that's such a tough one. But Glenavon Portadown would definitely be up there. I think it's a great rivalry. They're two, you know, non-Belfast teams, or what is it they call them, provincial teams that have had a lot of success down the years. As they've won Irish Cups, and Portadown had a great success in the league under Ronnie McFall. So they've tasted, and then under Gary Hamilton, obviously Glenavon were back for a few years. So I think that you're right. It is a big game, and you'd love to see that in some sort of cup final.
Yeah, maybe it isn't always like that, but I was just quite impressed and enjoyed being at it, reporting for the radio. So yes, Mid Ulster's blue. Glenavon won the roundabout throwabout. You look at the teams above Glenavon. Let's start putting some numbers onto this. 31 played, 22 points is their total. Interestingly enough, their minus 30 goal difference after a week where they've been duffed twice. Crusaders now also have minus 30 goal difference. So that's pretty much an even split with Glenavon. Well, you might argue both teams have more going forward for them, but it's the strongest point, at least from the Cruise side point of view. But that doesn't help them. Crusaders 3 points above them, haven't won in 5, but they do have a game in hand. Then you have a little jump up to Ballymena, who again aren't particularly in great form themselves. 30 games played, so one game in hand. Goal difference almost 20 more, minus 12 than either of those two teams. 29 points. Maybe that feels a bit too much, but they could keep on sinking. Bangor have played more than anybody. 31 games played, 33 points. And then there's Portadown, 29 games played, 34 points. Like, they looked like a team, it must be said, on Saturday that could be dragged down, struggling up top as well. A red card in that game as well, which there seemed to be plenty of consternation about. Did you see it? Because I think, from at least my angle, you could have put that tackle in the dictionary for red card.
Yeah, I did see it, and I thought it was probably a red card, but it can be so hard to tell sometimes. And I got all the red cards this weekend.
Yes.
Knowing that I was coming on here, I was sitting, pausing and restarting and pausing, restarting because it's hard to get it from that one angle shot.
Yeah, you do have to just sometimes not even know it's there, and obviously it's hard to not know that's coming up, but just instantly go for it. Like the Leroy Miller one's got a lot of strong feelings about it. Like
Yeah, it does. But I think that also has strong feelings because he should have went off early in the game.
Yeah.
So I think that people are like, well, he got his comeuppance. Lots of red cards this weekend. And I think referees got a lot right this weekend. To be honest with you, I was looking at some of the games, was thinking that. Um, but yeah, I think you were talking about Portadown. I think Portadown won't get dragged into that. I think
There's 12 points off Glenavon. It doesn't help by the fact that the loss to them there. 2 games in hand over them. Maybe 11th, but then that's what, 9 points.
Yeah,
They can drift.
one win, one win. They'll get Portadown out of that, and they'll get one win. I think out of the remaining games. I think.
Yeah.
They'll get more than one win, but I think that if they were to get one win and on the bottom two lose one, it just puts that gap, I think, too much.
Well, we're in a situation where I would argue, I always talk about this, would you check my hand? But I think if you're a Cruise fan, you might check my hand for 11th right now.
Yeah, you definitely would. They're not going to finish above that. I'll tell you that now for
No,
free.
well, I'm sorry to tell you, Cruise fans, but it's only been negativity here, this podcast, and many others. Maybe we could see a big turnaround, but I'm starting to be a believer in the Mourneview miracle. Let's talk about the team just above them, Ballymena. They do get a draw against Glenavon there. Again, if you haven't seen it, go just check it out to see that weird kit combination. I'm sure it was some sort of refereeing decision where Glenavon are playing in white shorts, socks with blue trim, but then a pink top. It's strange, but that's fair enough. That's the way it goes. Ballymena host Larne then on that pitch up there, and Larne are wearing their old navy with Ballymena wearing navy shorts. People are thinking, Larne are back, getting their first win in the last 5, but it takes 2 penalties to do it. I'm not totally believing this Larne rut is done just yet. They
Maybe
do
not.
win, but just about.
Yeah, maybe not, but it did look like they were pretty in control, or maybe
Yes, that's fair.
Yeah, you know what I mean. In that game, I think that maybe Ballymena had a goal chalked off for offside. Once again, I paused and started, was offside. Both penalty decisions were right. The red card was right.
Didn't love the second one, but yes, I think I'm on board with it now.
Yeah, it's you hate to see them given, especially against your
Because he
team.
got so much of the ball in the second one, but
Yeah, but he did catch him as well. I think that's the law of the game, isn't it? You know what I mean? If you go through, and I think he made a genuine attempt to play the ball, so he didn't get sent
if
off.
only there was VAR, Matthew. Oh.
Well, I think that Andy Ran. Here's something that might be controversial. Should the keeper be getting that second Andy Ran penalty? He puts it in the exact same spot. Surely, if if you're going to guess the right way, you're going to go to the same place. It was in the exact same spot in the goal. So I think that maybe the keeper should have known.
It's hard, you've got that yard or two, whatever, for the ball to shoot up, so it looks like it's hitting the top end. Andy Ryan, he's come back. He's had a few moments. Again, it wouldn't be him if he wasn't beefing things up with these penalties. Perhaps you might say for Lord, as you said, they had their chances, and of course they didn't really need to do too much because they were 2-0 up in the first half, aided by the fact that Success Edegan got sent off for kicking out.
Stupid.
It's one of those weird things where it is a red card, but
It's stupid. It's David Beckham-esque, isn't it?
it's stupid. It feels like, oh, technicality, you're gone.
Yeah. No, I think it's silly.
I know you don't want to see kicking out all the time, but we've seen it. Let's say not be ignored, but referees don't maybe see it as ferocious as maybe others do. Again, any sort of kick out usually gets you off. A plain view of the referee, out he goes.
I don't think you should have given the referee its decision to make there. It was stupid. It wasn't even like an immediate kick out. He had a wee think about it.
Yeah, he did.
So, so it was just pettiness, and the game that was done as a contest. Then
And I don't think this counts, but I've heard he's not that type of player.
and no, neither Leroy Miller or anyone else has been sent off over
No.
the last. It's
I cannot wait. One day I'll go, he's got sent off, and you know what? He is that type of player. I'll be the first one to whip that out. But an important bounce back for Lauren.
Yeah, definitely. They don't do like proper ruts, do they? Really? Everyone gets a wee bit excited. But I don't think that they do like get along. Like I suppose that wee run that they were on there was they didn't win in
Winless
four.
in four. Now, come
Winless
on,
in
Matthew.
four. I mean that's
Don't poo-poo the media hype.
if the Glens did winless in four, there wouldn't be too many eyebrows raised because they usually do that at least twice a season. Whereas Lauren, we're not used to it, you know. Although I suppose Linfield as well. Linfield aren't used to that. When they go on a wee run, people, as we heard on your podcast a few weeks ago, very enjoyable listen. There's a lot of hyperbole, but I think that Lauren needed that, and there's a lot of people saying to me, "Oh, I fancy Ballymena to get something in this game," and I was like, "Why?
No. Why?
Why? This has not been." But I was hot on Oran Kearney coming into Ballymena. I thought that is the signing that, or the manager to turn it all around. Now I know he's got his hands tied because he hasn't been able to recruit fully yet, but I mean, it's hard to. I mean, I think it's a pretty bad run. It'd be hard to find a manager that's taken over. Maybe Paddy McLaughlin. Well, Paddy McLaughlin got off the flyer right enough at Glenavon. It'll be hard stretch to find a manager who's had absolutely no bounce effect whatsoever.
It's like a dead fish that's disintegrated.
It's wild. It's absolutely crazy. His only win in recent months come against Crusaders. So you're just looking, going, wow, And obviously the Boxing Day win against Corey and give them all a bit of hope, and then they went and signed Fuad Souley, a player who I loved at the Glens. But I always say, Fuad Souley won't win you games. He'll help you stop you losing them, but he'll not, he'll not win you a game. But
when does that start for him? I've said this before. Ballymena are like a team that you look at on Football Manager and you go, "Wow, I've heard of him. Oh, that looks exciting." But then their players, not a team yet. And as you mentioned there, you can't build it all in one day. Oh, the exodus from Ballymena this summer, regardless if they're top flight or not, and they're very likely to be top flight. Oh, it's going to be manna from heaven. I think it's going to be fascinating. Who goes from there and where, because I think you could genuinely see players leave Ballymena who rarely started or is kind of in and out of the team, who goes into what people might see as a better team because they just suit their style better. There's actually a lot of young players there as well. Like, I quite like Joel Thompson there a wee bit. Like, is Hood going to stick around, or is he going to be picked up by a better team? Corbali's been in and out. I know a few of these are under contract, but there's a couple of nice players in the mix that are starting. Like, will O'Connor stay there next year? O'Reilly's had like a wee moment or two. We haven't really seen Alex Scott this year. There is a big squad, and I don't know how many of them will still be there come next year, particularly with all the signings that came in.
I really liked Toure at Glenavon. I really liked him. I thought he was a great player, and actually was champion the Glen signing him last summer. I was surprised about the Ballymena, but he hasn't really hit the heights. And that's the thing, Ballymena fans at the start of the season were talking about the absolute amount of talent in their squad, and then they've completely turned now and it's a myth. It's a myth because the players aren't delivering, which is fair enough because you have to deliver. Football's played on grass, not paper, so you have to deliver on the pitch, and they haven't been doing that. So I think they're right to just absolutely call that team in the summertime, and they will go all out because they're not short of a few quid, but they need to get the recruitment right.
So I've heard. Yeah, they absolutely do. And look, I'm not saying those players are going to go, like they all have been. They've been fitted in oftentimes. But Daniel Lafferty, I didn't even mention Calvin McCurry. Even McElhenney came in just recently. Don't know how many more years has he got. But the Ballymena thing's been odd, and I think for them they're just looking the season to end right now so they can crack on with however next season looks. But Lauren continue to stay right at the tippy top because of that win. And I'm going to talk about predictions in a second here. But look, I did go, I had a weird inkly feeling that actually this could be Colerane's time. They're winning loads. They could sneak up. This January transfer window's been good. They're looking solid. They've found their feet. And then they get slapped about by like one of the worst form teams in the league. What is going on? Dungannon, 3 points against Coleraine.
We've been there, Corey, and I can sympathise. Going to Steinworth Park and getting slapped about. But as you say, it's not Dungannon that we've known for a long time. Although I did watch them against Cliftonville a few weeks ago, thought they were brilliant in the second half. But that was a surprise. That really was a surprise. Now, Coleraine go back. It's Coleraine insane. I don't know if it's just me because I check the results a lot because obviously you're sort of hoping that they drop points. They go behind a lot.
They do. They really haven't figured either. They haven't figured it out at the back, and I think maybe on Saturday that could have been just a bit of miscommunication. I mean, their goalkeeper's 12 years old. It's just.
Yeah, I mean,
you've got talent there, don't you? But
that's that again. They got talent, but the thing is, so the goals to the giveaway were absolute criminal. I mean, the first goal was really soft.
They're a bit like Cruz on steroids, are they not?
Well, the second goal was in slow motion. It was literally like I felt
Actually,
like
looking for a red card, except in real life, you couldn't slow it down any further.
correct. But the second goal, I don't know what was going on. To be honest, but it was really good. It was really high press. That one, wasn't it? So the second goal was the press from Dungannon was absolutely brilliant. And it was the first goal that went in slow motion. And I was really impressed by Dungannon's press in the second one. But in saying that, Coleraine had about 3 attempts to get rid of it from the keeper.
Yeah.
The Charles done it was just get rid, and they didn't do it. So fair play for that. And then the third one is the old unmarked at the back post, which is criminal defending, and your manager will go through you for that. And Rory Higgins said that it was his worst moment in football, which is probably heat of the moment, to be honest with you. But I think that, or he said it was the worst performance maybe he managed or something along them lines. But I think then it leaves Coleraine with maybe a wee bit much to do. A team that me and you were big on at the start of the season.
Yes.
But
and you know what? I was telling a lie. They lost their child, and he went back not on loan. And 26-year-old Rand Schofield is currently in that. So sorry there, Coleraine. You've changed it about a lot, but he didn't have a good day.
No, he didn't have a good day at all. It's been a bit of an issue for them this season, goalkeeper, to be honest. And as I learned as a Glentoran fan when we were trying to replace Elliot Morris for years and years and years, it's not an easy position to nail down in your team. Especially it's a position that I thought has progressively got worse throughout the years.
Maybe it'll be viewed as the start of something, a real opportunity lost, but they're 6 points away from Larne here, and they've got the same amount of games played. Finally, there's Larne drawing at Linfield, the door's open, and they've just failed to capitalise. I'm not using the word that begins with CH here, but I guess they've won the games that have got them to the dance. But going away to Dungannon, it ain't easy. But they've struggled. I know they've mainly struggled away from home, and they are dangerous on that carpet Saturday at Stagmore Park. But if you want to be champions, you need to do better here.
Yeah.
A great man once said, "Winners win," and Coleraine didn't do that.
Yeah, that's right. They didn't, and that is the sort of game that I can't even say it's the sort of game that Lauren go there and win because I remember last season they went there and they lost, so it's tough. But in this sort of run, from now to the end of the season, you just gotta be putting them points away, especially when you know you've got the split to come and you're just gonna have tough game after tough game. And the thing is about Korean having almost like an extended split because they play us before going into the split,
Yeah.
which is a tough game, obviously, for both teams. Um, I've watched the Glens and Korean this season, and I have not seen two teams look as well matched as I've seen them two teams anytime
We've
they've
beat
come
them
up.
every time.
Yeah, but there's been so you could put a cigarette paper
You've got
between them.
more. You've got more points against Coleraine than you have done Glenavon.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that honestly, though, when I've watched the Glens against Korean, it's been such tight games. Now, obviously, the one down there, or the one up there, in Korean, the Glens came out second half, I suppose, and were much better. But Korean did well in the first half, so it's 50-50. But the other games that we've played them, even in the League Cup, very very close encounters. But then they just seem to be prone just to go out and just lose a wee random game here and there because it's not like they're going out
Yeah.
and they're probably putting bad runs together. I know that they lost a couple back to back earlier in the season. They lost 3 and 4 around that sort of New Year Christmas period, but they're not putting necessarily a bad run. They're just losing these wee dots. But it's the first year of that, dare I say it, project proper, and I think that they'll take a lot of learning from here. I think that they'll see that they'll make big changes in the summer, and maybe players that they went big on aren't as good as maybe what I thought. I've been reading Macquarie fans saying, it's Charles Dunn hasn't really hit the heights that he hit last season at times. Um, and then they've obviously lost like the Cody Lance Foster for most of the season.
Yeah.
Their injuries have been pretty bad. And at times I've looked at their players that are out and thinking they would start for most teams in this league.
You never know. Maybe it's far more dangerous to be on a practice pitch at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday than it is on the scaffolding. So you never know, ups and downs. But Carrick Rangers against Bangor, final game on the Saturday. We haven't talked about a strange one. Carrick take the lead, looked as though they were going to continue on their good run. They don't lose this game. However, probably a missed opportunity. I have got some intel from Carrick, and they feel like they've let 2 points slip through their fingers here. Red card for each team. A penalty is how Bangor score their goal. We'll talk about this fella, Harry Lynch, and where he's being linked to. Maybe that's gone under the radar there, but I think Bangor will bank this.
Yeah, they'll be delighted. They needed to get points on the board pretty quick. Because they're running a risky game, despite their early season form. Um, and Carrick, yeah, Carrick's big mad run continues. It's been some turnaround from them, to be honest. I didn't see it coming, but the way they responded to that 7-0 drubbing was it's been fairly incredible. Fair
You've
play to
woke
them.
them up. This is like the sliding doors moment. It's like all these ex-Glentoran players are like, I remember when I played for them and we were winning. Let's do that.
Yeah, woke the beast. I think Adam Leckie's a loss for them. Big,
Huge.
strong physical presence of player. I absolutely hate the Glens playing against, so I'm delighted that he's out of our game on Tuesday night. Um, but yeah, I watched the highlights of this game, and it looked like Carrick. Well, to be fair, Bangor could have scored before one of the red cards, but yeah,
Yeah.
Carrick had chances too, and but I think both. I know you're saying that the Carrick were disappointed not to take away all 3 points. I think both teams will just take the point and get out of there. It keeps Carrick's good run going, and it keeps Bangor a point further from Crusaders after they got beat.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked there about teams like Portadown and Ballymena where they are. Ballymena 4 points above the Cruise, so unless they snap out of it, they might be dragged down. But again, that win over Cruise, that was vital. Bangor, they've played as many games as Glenavon, but they're 11 points above them. Cruise and Ballymena both have games, at least one game each in hand over Bangor, but Bangor have got 33 compared to Ballymena's 29. It's a bigger gap between them and the Crews. They'll be sweaty. They're a bit like Portadown going, give us 4 more points and then we can chill out, maybe, kinda.
Yeah, I think we play them. The Glens play them next week. Um, and then I think there are other games away to Dungannon. So not too easy games, but I think they'll pick up points in the split, especially at home.
Yeah.
Oh, cliche, actually cliche. Out their pitch is a great leveler, but it's sort
Oh,
of
we're filling them out today. We didn't even mention that Roddy McAree might be one of the best managers in the league, but it's in. We've got it in the pod. One can't go without it. It's in. Yeah, well, it's. I do think this was probably coming for Bangor, but in turn they've yet to really give up in any game that I've seen so far. Like they've really been able to ride with the punches, and they've been picked apart at times, but they're always giving people difficult games, and your lot are going to have to go there to try and get a result. But let's wrap up kind of where we started here and with the Linfield game. Stuart Cherry said to me last week there was going to be a shock, and I said, don't worry, I know this, it's going to happen at Solitude, and it did. Matthew Brown. Cliftonville beat the Blues. Bad week for them.
Yeah, I watched this game, and it was a strange sort of. It was very cagey. Very cagey is the way to describe it. Not brilliant, not a brilliant game of football, but Cliftonville did something that they didn't do against us, and they set themselves up to be hard to beat. Very, very hard to play through. Linfield just couldn't really break them down to the extent they would have liked to. We're maybe relying on high
do
ball.
Linfield have problem? Do Linfield have that players that can break down?
But
I
Kirk,
know
Kirk
they've had
Miller's
the-
delivery is fantastic.
It is.
So you could really, he could break you down. Yeah, Matthew Fitzpatrick is on fire. So you always fancy him to score a goal. But the way Cliftonville played against us is that they came out and they were like, right, we're going to have a go. And it made me nervy. It was like, because they did have a few chances against the Glens, and then that sort of waned, and we got a foothold in the game, and then went out and hammered them. Smart management from Magilton, he didn't want that to happen. Josh Kelly was absolutely fantastic for Cliftonville. They defended really, really well, and then they took their chances, which Linfield didn't do. Game of very few chances, to be fair. And I have to say, I think Cliftonville deserved the 2-0 win. Not as bad as what Linfield fans were making out the performance to be. Cliftonville weren't fantastic. They weren't like blowing Linfield away. But at the same time, I do think that they deserved the win in the end, just about. One mentioned this, the strangest thing when Linfield went 1-0 down, and I seen they were making a sub, and I seen they were bringing on Jamie Mulgrew. I was so confused by that. Like, Jamie Mulgrew doesn't, 39-year-old Jamie Mulgrew doesn't strike me as the sort of player that you bring on when you're 1-0 down chasing the game. It was bizarre. I didn't really see that sub.
Again, that just comes back to something that we discussed a lot here. It's recruitment. We talked about squad with yourselves and how full your bench is looking at the minute. And I know Linfield have had the odd injury here or there. I think Offord has been a huge miss for them this year. You can even add in the lack of Chris Shields, but they were one goal down in this game away from home, and you look at the bench, things weren't working for them at the start of the game, and you just didn't have anybody that really could have changed a huge amount. Frizzell did his part.
Yeah, well, you're probably right. Not massive options in the bench, but still, I don't think Jamie Mulgrew would have been the option that I think that they really should have went for. And yeah, it was a bizarre one for me. Linfield look back to what their fans were complaining about. Very predictable, very one-dimensional. It was, the even against ourselves, to be honest with you, a few weeks ago, they weren't brilliant. The Glens missed a bucket full of chances at times, but that's it. You don't take your chances, you don't win games. And the chances that Linfield did create, they didn't take them on Sunday. They've left themselves again a mountain now to climb. But second place is definitely surmountable for all them teams still. So that's the irony really of Lauren dropping points recently. It looked like it was a 3-horse race for second place, and it could easily be there's 4 teams in with a shout now. So it sort of complicates things for the likes of the Glens and the Blues.
Well, like we look at it here, I must say credit go Fapa too. I know he must have good games and then doesn't have good games. He's very physical. I quite like him as a midfielder, it must be said. I know he came off with 20 minutes to go, but he was one of the players where I thought this is if you were consistent like this, Cliftonville would be missing somebody like you.
Yeah, you know who the other player that I like, and he's been getting a bit of criticism as Liam McStravick. I think he looks lively.
Yes, lively, but it hasn't all come together, I feel, in a red
Yeah,
shirt.
I mean when they took him off last week against the Glens, they were a worse team for it. But yeah, he does. He looks lively. I think with next season he could probably kick on. At Cliftonville. It's
I'm
either
sure that's what they're
permanent.
hoping for.
Yeah, it's either permanently. I think he is.
Yeah. And we're going to end this bit reviewing all the games by saying if VAR was there, I don't think that Gormley goal would have stuck.
What a
Like
strange
three,
goal.
there's about three reasons you chalk that one off.
So strange. So strange. It looked. I thought it hit him up the face, but it was definitely. There's a good angle from behind the net.
And was he
And
offside as well? Maybe.
yeah, I would say so.
Sure, whatever. It's the last kick of the game.
No one cares. But Linfield,
No one cares.
Linfield players really, really half-heartedly protested. They were like, "Oh, it's blow up, blow up."
Well, we'll see. Let's see how this sets things up as we approach a few games in the league this week. But it's all about the quarterfinals in the Irish Cup this weekend. Currently sitting in fourth are your Glens, but they've played two less games than everybody else. 59 points, exactly the same amount of points as Linfield above them. Then you have Coleraine on 61 and Larne on 67. I'll do the maths for you, listener. You add in those two games, let's give you 6 points for them. You are, what, 2 points within Larne? So you've got them coming up this weekend. You've also got a game against Carrick at home, not to fluff your lines there. But if you get victory there at the Oval, you bring that deficit down once again. You're 5 points away. It's just going to be one of those one game at a time cliche to add into the mix today.
Yeah, well, I think that it's tough because this post split, you'd really need a Larne total collapse, and they seem to like drop a couple of points and then get straight back up on it. So I just think it's Larne are definitely in pole position. Um, Sometimes having more games to play isn't necessarily a good thing. Like, you definitely not have the points on the board, obviously, but I just think that having more games to play leaves more opportunities for slip up, and you've got so many games, especially
Would
when
you
you've got
shake my hand for going back to that for 4 points right now?
um against Carrick and Bangor. No, no, I
No,
probably
so
wouldn't.
shush. Shush you, alright?
Well, hold on. I'm not saying that we're not. I just think that I don't mean we're not going to get the 6 points here. I hope we do. I just mean in terms of overtaking Larne further down the line. I think we'll probably we haven't beat Carrick at home since 2022. In the league, we beat them in the County Armagh Shield, but we haven't beat them in the league since 2022, which is crazy because it always felt like a guaranteed 3 points, and it was always 5, 6 goals or 4 goals. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I think that we just not need to be sloppy. Just need to really focus. And earlier in the season, we played them, and Heatley broke away and scored. They really put the pressure on us for sort of 20 minutes, and the Glens dominated, and it was just one of them games that we couldn't score. Pat Hooban was only really getting in this stride. So I mean, with Pat Hooban, anything's possible.
Almost anything is possible. We'll have to see. Look, again, a dodgy result or two for the Glens, and Lauren win 2 games. That's the title race back, done and dusted. Crews win 2. Glenavon, completely wreck themselves against somebody else. It's all over. But it's nice to dream. It's nice to look ahead. Should be said, we didn't talk about Harry Lynch. Rumours. I only didn't realise he was 19 only. Rumours he's maybe going to Ipswich or something. That's like, if I look back, he has been really solid for Bangor, and he's been on penalties for a reason. He can dispatch them with ease. Really helped get those points for them along the way.
Yeah, it's a strange link, isn't it? It's like it's one of those, you're taken aback. I don't know. It was that sort of caught me off guard. Ipswich, but that's not the first. I've seen other players link. It must be the Kieran McKenna link.
Yes,
Um,
they all sound the same, so they must like each other.
yeah, yeah, it must be. But yeah, he's done well by all accounts. I mean, again, it's not Bangor isn't a team that I've seen an awful lot of this year. We've still to play them another time. But fair play to him if he can get that move. Brilliant for him. But with by where he would be, we see a lot of these players go over and they end up playing academies. Crystal Palace are big for it. Like signing players from our league and then putting them in the academy, and then they end up I don't know where. Um, you're almost better off maybe you can go a division below, or look at Terry Devlin. And he started off in League One at Portsmouth. Now he's absolutely flying. But fair play to him if he goes over there and can get into the Ipswich sort of even reserve setup.
Absolutely. Well, it could be them or a number of championship sides. Reportedly, talking about reports, um, a strange one. Fitzpatrick talked that his time or his break away from his job in teaching is coming to an end, so he has to decide if he's going to keep on playing football. It's very likely he's just going to keep on playing full time football. He might not. I thought I would have paid a lot more attention to this if we didn't have the whole Mornview gate where he seemed to enjoy like annoying the Glenavon fans, because then with money that feels like a connection. Maybe Ballymena might go, you can be part time here for
Well,
decent
that's what I was going
whack.
to say. You don't have to play full time football in the Irish League anymore to get a full time wage. So there's absolutely
Correct.
teaching jobs by all accounts are quite difficult to come by on a permanent basis. So if it's a job that he really likes, then I don't see why he would, get at this age. What is he, 31? Give it up. I think that he's got a massive decision, and it's obviously one that he'll sit down with his family and make. And it's something that had been doing the rumors, doing the rumor mill since December time. Doubt them think they're going to let him walk away for free. And I think that Ballymena would be the most obvious destination because, like I say, they've got a lot of players going out. They could pay him very decent money, by all accounts. And I don't see where else he goes in the league on a part-time basis. He will not go back to Glenavon. And I don't think I see anywhere else for. I know Cliftonville are interested, but again, you know, unless there's some Canadian dollar coming in again, then I don't think that they're going to be able to match what Ballymena will.
Before we get into the games in the cup this weekend, we've got a couple midweek. Yourself against CAC Rangers, which you can watch on Nifltiville. That's again, it's a case of you do the business and you're flying. But look, CAC Rangers, you said decent record against the Glens. We'll just pretend that Taylor's Avenue game didn't happen in the cup, and they're in four.
Yeah, they are in form. It's concerning. It's a big game. It's a tough game. Like I say, earlier on in the season, we were it was they battered us for about 20 minutes, and then we were probably the better team and just couldn't score. I think that if you the Glens just don't. The thing is, you can't really use excuses because the Glens just have so much talent there at their disposal that they just have to be going out and beating these teams that are ultimately a bottom six team. And Carrick are probably going to finish the bottom six again this season. Just looking at sort of the table. But so I do think the Glens have to go out and win that tomorrow. Even a point isn't enough for me. I think that with so many big games coming up post split and then the Korean game as well, this is the one you need to hedge your bets on these games. So the Glens just have to be up for it and get out there and get the 3 points. We'll take a 1-0, any
Totally.
any sort of win.
I think you will. A unique fixture on a Wednesday, the illuminating fixture between Portadown and Cliftonville. Again, it's hard to really pick that. I mean, maybe it's a nice bounce back for Portadown. Cliftonville getting that win. They've been, like I've said this loads, they're all out of sorts. The only thing I can say is maybe that Shamrock Park pitch can maybe help it be a draw. Maybe that's what I'll go for, 1-1, 0-0. But Cliftonville seem to be the more free flowing side going forward.
Yeah, but they're also very unpredictable, aren't they?
Incredibly.
You just don't know what you're going to get with Cliftonville. But I think that the big thing for Cliftonville for me is they're well coached. They've got limited amounts of talent on their bench, and they rely heavily on, say, for example, academy products coming on rather than big money signings that they've went and signed from somewhere else. But they are well coached, and I think that Jim Mitchell knows how to get the job done. And I think, like for example, last week against the Glens, he got it wrong and he got punished, and then he changed it against Linfield and he got it right. So I think that this is a game that they will win. I think it'll be probably 2-0 to Cliftonville.
Yeah, it kind of helps solidify their top six place if they can do that. They've had at least plenty of games in hand, Cliftonville, and then the one league game is happening on Saturday. I think this must have been a delayed game from a while ago. Once it gets Portadown, Ballymena against the Ports in this kind of strange game where kind of the winner can say, well, not so much Ballymena, but it's like a mini 6-pointer in a way. Portadown going to Ballymena doesn't sound like it's going to be a thriller. That
No, probably not a thriller. Ballymena. I don't think Ballymena win this, to be honest with you, because they don't win any games generally. I know they beat the Cruise Freak School. It's just I've just lost all faith in Ballymena picking up a win. Um, maybe go for a draw on this one. Portadown. If Portadown at the end of the day, if Portadown draw all their games from now to the end of the season, they're safe. So they'll just try not to lose it. And I think that they'll be more than capable of doing that.
bold strategy. Let's see if that works out. Of course, Ballymena are going to be without success. Edicum there, so we will sit tight. But look, Irish Cup, it's the big game in town. Friday night, the most predictable Friday night fixture maybe we've ever seen in the Cup. Glens against Larne. This is where we can all see well, look, Guntorn have got the treble on here if they can get through to the semis.
Well, trouble red cards potentially. We should do a sweepstake. What time are Lauren going to get a penalty? What time are Glentoran going to get a man sent off? We need to guard against those two things because this isn't just the thing that's happened this season. This has happened in so many games against Lauren. It's like I always make the joke before we play them and have done for a while now. They're going to get a penalty. Hopefully we're studying them this week in training because it seems almost inevitable. We just need to guard against that, and we need to use the fire in our belly that from that game at Inver Park. We've shown that we can match or better Lauren this season. So just now, I talked earlier on in the podcast about how Declan Devine has had some monkeys on his back, and he had the trophy monkey, the haven't hammered anyone. There was games that we hadn't, or grounds we hadn't done particularly well at throughout time, such as going away to Korean, and we've got that monkey off the back. One of the last remaining monkeys is in the shape of Larne. The Glens haven't beat them in such a long time, and it is such a frustrating fixture. It really is. You just go in there expecting very little. I feel good about this one, and it's the first time I have felt really good about going into a Glens and Larne game in a long time. I think the last time we beat them was maybe that time we absolutely annihilated them at the Oval, the Conor McMahon show, and that's going back to 2022. So it's just a long run that needs to come to an end, and it's almost got the same sort of feel as that Linfield game last year in the Irish Cup. It could easily go to extra time, but I think we might just I think it's going to be maybe 1-0, and I think we might just have enough to get us over the line. Just hopefully it doesn't take too much from us, and then we've got the game against Bangor, and then followed by the cup final. A lot of games coming up, but I think the Glens might just get over the line in this one.
I think in particular because you have that game midweek, I think this is maybe going to go the distance, be it 1-1, 0-0. Both teams feeling a bit tetchy about things. I think it's going to go to penalties, and unfortunately, Larne, they rarely mess them up.
Well, we'll
Sauce, babe.
we'll have to just wait and see. There's no cooler way to go out of an Irish Cup game or any sort of cup game, but yeah, I think that it's going to be a huge crowd for it. I think, and my nerves are going to be absolutely shot on Friday, to be honest with you. But it's going to be one of those games you know what, it's probably going to be absolute nil-nil bore fest.
Oh, that's exactly. But score early. Let's make it fun.
Yeah.
Let's make it fun for all. Um, Who's going to be key for the Glens there, do you think, if it's going to be victory for them? I think for Larne, they're still going to be without Miller, aren't they? Because the red card's been extended. It's going to be, I think, can Ferguson stand up and be resolute? Because he's not called upon oftentimes for Larne, and he's let in a few more goals than he had done for much of the early parts of the season. So I think Ferguson's key for Larne, because it's going to be one of the bigger tests. He obviously conceded two, and Hubin had his way, kinda, at least, well, the first one, let's say, a bit of striker magic again against Larne. And I think for the Glens, is it all on Hubin, or who would you, if you could tell me, if this player's man of the match, I think we've won, who is it?
If Ross Clark's man of the match, will have won because he'll have put in some absolutely smashing balls to Pat Hubin, so he's going to, because that's what he does. Or, I mean, there's so many that you could pick out because, again, if Jordan Stewart turns it on, which in the games against Larne, he hasn't really done this season. He's done it against lots of teams, but that's the one that he probably hasn't. I think if you can get him on the ball playing like he did last week, then he'd be massive. Ultimately, the Glens in the first half against Larne last time out, the midfield was totally anonymous. And that was an issue. We weren't getting the players on the ball, and they may as well just not have been on the pitch. And in the second half, that changed. So the Glens need to make sure that the midfield turns up from the first minute. Leroy Miller will be a big miss for Larne, and then you got to keep Andy Ryan quiet. So, but I think that whilst they have a lot of talent all over the pitch, I think that in midfield, if the Glens can win that battle, then they'll be they'll be doing well because I've seen us lose this game there so many times.
Well, all eyes will be that on Friday. Then you go to Saturday, and I think a couple of strong favourites going into this. Cliftonville go down to Loch All, championship side there, tight, sticky pitch. But I think this is not the same Loch All side that we saw last year. That gave Cliftonville the odd bit of trouble, and I think they'll be able to play it about and win out. Especially, Brian Healy will know what this Loch All team will be all about, and I think they'll get the goals. I don't know if it'll be a total blowout, but I think they'll be comfortable with 20 minutes to go.
Yeah, I agree. Don't think there'll be any issues, and say maybe 2-0 to Cliftonville.
You then have the derby of sorts at the Coleraine Showgrounds, where Limavady, the home team, host Coleraine, the away team. Do you think Limavady will make them go into the away change rooms just out of badness, just to really annoy their landlords?
When the Glens played Portadown in the Irish Cup in 2015, the Glens used the away changing room. Elliot Morris was captain that year, and basically the Glens were making a request to switch over to the home changing room, and Elliot said no, let's not do it. Let's play in the away changing room and make it like a proper final, like a proper game where you are the away team. So, if I was Limavady, yes, I would make them. I would make them go into the away team changing room.
Make Coleraine wear the away kit as well,
or they could do some sort of weird combination. Just didn't know you.
Red top, blue shorts, mixed up. Limavady can play about with it. We'll have to see. I mean, it'll probably be. People might think it might be a wee bit closer just because of the form Limavady have been on, but you'd think Saturday afternoon in particular, home ground, after the way things went last Saturday, I think Coleraine should have the quality. Like, Linfield just stumbled over themselves in that game, away from home, Friday night, cold, all the furore that was going on with that team leading up to that game. And in the end, Limavady just had that nice moment, and there's big saves as well for Limavady, but they were able to capitalise and get the goal from a bit of a mistake from Johns. I don't know if Coleraine are going to open up in the same way, and I think even if Limavady take the lead, Coleraine will have so much more juice. I think they'll win out.
I think they'll win about 3-0. I think you look at Limavady since the Linfield game of drawn two games against Loch All and Dundela, which is pretty poor results for them, especially Dundela, who are really struggling this season. Just at being at home, technically, I think it's got a massive advantage for Coleraine. I just don't see there being an issue here. I think it will be an easy 3-0 victory for Coleraine.
And then Swifts, Welders. I think if this was away from home and it was a grass pitch, you'd think maybe. But, Welders coming off the back of losing a key game at the top of the championship against Annie United. We've seen that as much as Dungannon have had their moments away from home, At home, they look very strong. They've beat one of the better teams in the league. As long as they keep up their concentration levels, and usually Rodney McAree teams do, they should win out here. Might be 0-0, 1-1 at half time, but I think the Swifts could sure things out here. Mainly because I just don't think Welders have the strength at the back that you might need to kind of get a surprise here.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it's just going to be a sort of Dungannon win. I mean, I'm sorry, listen, there's no upsets in this
No,
Irish Cup.
unfortunately.
Yeah, we're just going to go into the semi-finals with all the top teams intact. I'll go for 2-0 to Dungannon. I think, again, if it was at the Welders ground, we've seen the Welders last year give the Glens a really good game in the Irish Cup. Then it could be, the shoe could be another foot, but no, I just think Dungannon, with all their experience and with Rodney, the best manager in the Irish League, cliche tick, in the dugout, that they'll win.
Nice one. Well, Matthew, nice to have you here, chatting everything from VAR to non-cup upsets and well, the title race that we've all been excited about, which will live on at least for another week until the week after the Irish Cup quarterfinals ends it all for good. I said it last week. Give me your final four and in what order, followed by your bottom two.
I think that it's going to be Larne first. I think the Glens will get in the second, Corey in third, Linfield fourth, and the bottom two is going to be Glenavon and Crusaders rock bottom.
So you think Glenavon are still going to be 12th?
I think so. No, Crusaders rock bottom. I said
Crusaders.
Glenavon and then Crusaders rock bottom. I think Glenavon are still going to be in the playoff. But I think the Crews, just from what I've seen, I just do not think that they're going to have enough in the tank to get them out of there. Really like that experience, and Glenavon I think just have a bit more proven Irish League talent, which is what you need in this league. So, like I say, very very invested in that. It's been a while since we've had this sort of relegation.
Well, we'll see. Maybe this is the year that we see two change and two go up and two go down again. But again, I didn't predict this a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, but I mean, I watch that playoff every year, and I always get really disappointed. I'm always hoping for an upset in it. Like, apologies to the team that's in it, but it's just I'm always hoping for an upset. Never happens. So I would like that this year. That would be nice. Then we would have the ultimate season.
We're just not there at the minute. We'll finish this podcast off with a tiny bit of news. I don't know what this means in particular, but Cliftonville have announced that at an extraordinary general meeting that they have, a new club chair. His name is Mr. Kevin Crossan, and he is now voted in by club members. So, Mr. Crossan, he's the new chair. Let's see if that maybe moves things in regards to TIG. We don't know. But Matthew, I reckon we're going to be chatting to each other before the season end, either celebrating or crying for your Glens.
Well, I have to say, Peter, it's really nice to be invited on this podcast in March, and the Glens haven't sacked their manager, and they're not in free fall, and that has to be a first.
Well, absolutely. Insert the final Irish League cliche of the pod. No car park protests either. And on that note, good luck.
Cheers, Peter.
We had the big VAR podcast, one of those which you're thinking maybe could have happened a couple of years ago, maybe could be one we never did, but it was here. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure you have strong opinions. If you do, there's little comments you can leave underneath this podcast. I think you can on Spotify if you're not on podcasts. I don't know. Does it exist? Stats tell me it exists, but never used it. Thanks for listening to me there. If you do. Anyway, if you do listen to me, that's very nice. If you would like to follow this podcast, subscribe to this podcast, good way to do that is pretty much on the player that you already have. Go to the main page of the Kicking Match page and click the button, click the wheel, and you can subscribe or follow. It's free, it's easy, and you get a notification as soon as the podcast is out. Enjoy your weekend, folks. Cheerio!